So you've risen through the ranks. I understand that you went into management at that time. Now, I'm really interested in this story about how you come to start Block, because I said to you at lunchtime, there'd have been a time where you'd have been 30, 31. Jane would have supported you, but you've got a young family as well. I think at the time, most people wouldn't be thinking, and you had a good job. You had a good job, probably well paid. You were probably well established in management. Why did you give it all up to start a company that it could have gone completely wrong?
I don't know the answer to that question specifically. I just think there's a burning ambition within me to do something good with my life and try and maximise the opportunity. Certainly from where my career was concerned, I think I started to think about what else I could be doing when telecoms at the time, and Colt weren't the only ones doing it, were going through lots of restructures to try and make themselves cash flow positive and profitable as organisations after spending loads of money deploying fibre under the pavement of the city, etc., and trying to get back into a profitable position. So I started to think about, because of the amount of reorganisations I went through, how I could, what was going to come next for me from a technology perspective. So one of those options was set up my own business. I think I started thinking about it, I'd say about 2 years before we actually did it. I started thinking about what the idea could be, started thinking about names, about what it could be called. It's just like you get a bit naive and you look back on it, but you start thinking about what we could stand for and what we could be delivering to businesses. But we didn't have any customers. We didn't have to go and find any customers because we'd never sold anything before. And I think that's the dilemma that anybody's got for any company that they want to set up, is who am I going to sell to and how am I going to sell? Because that's the ultimately the lifeblood of any organisation, is getting your clients in through the door. And those first few clients are really difficult to get. So to answer the question of how I came to set up Block, I think I went through the sort of technical ranks of being a network engineer. We did some great projects, consolidation projects on the infrastructure side, and really learned how to deliver good technical projects. And I think that stood me in good stead for the rest of my career. It's probably worth mentioning. Then I had an opportunity to go into team leader, manager. And eventually when I left, I was like European network manager, managing the sort of European IT infrastructure for Colt, and 12 or 13 data centres that they had for hosted customer solutions. And at the time, Mark, who was sort of co-founder of Block, he was one of the senior sort of technical architects in my team. So, and he was one of the guys that was having discussions with around how we could set up a business. And I was the first one to sort of pull the plug and jump when I got the chance of voluntary redundancy from Colt. And it was, again, I'd love to say that it was definitely an opportunity that I focused my time and energy on getting, because it was one that I was interested in, of which there were probably 3 or 4 at the time. But the opportunity that arose was to go and work for a high-profile NHS trust hospital in London. So effectively, I could quit my job, get a little bit of redundancy pay, and then go consulting the week after into that organisation. And that organisation was looking to do things that we were looking to do as a potential business, which was helping customers deliver really good infrastructure solutions for them and making sure that there was aligned to what they're trying to do from a business perspective. How that came about was I was brought in to assess their network infrastructure performance, because it was not performing as it should after a significant investment. Help them identify what their problems were, help them then go through a new business case for new investment to sort those problems out. And during that time, Mark also got the opportunity to sort of come across from Colt as well. We joined forces. He looked after taking on some high-profile projects for the hospital and delivering those that had stalled and weren't getting delivered. And then I continued building my relationship and trust with the IT director to help them get the business case over the line. And eventually, because of the amount of credibility that we built up from a technical perspective and helping them, we got appointed the prime contractor to sort the problems out for them. That became Block's first opportunity.
Do you think you mentioned there? You said a couple of years before you were thinking about having a business and starting a business. Do you think if you hadn't have been consulting for that hospital and you thought, oh, actually that could have been my first customer, do you think you'd have set up? Because most people are worried. You said earlier, but most people are worried about getting customers, and you never sold before. You'd been a technical guy. You'd never sold before. You'd never convinced a customer. You'd never done a deal. Do you think if you hadn't have got that consultancy gig with that customer, you'd have actually set up?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's one of those sort of things that happens for everything happens for a reason, and I'm a big believer in that. But we had the idea about setting up our own business, and when the opportunity came across to contract and build up some funds, which I think that was the primary thing, we knew that if I went contracting and built up a bank account effectively, that could provide some money and some resource to go and help us build a team around us, and obviously with doing times in that by 2, we then build up some funds to it. Did we think we'd end up being such a dominant player within healthcare as a result of that first opportunity? Probably not.
Probably not, yeah.
But what we did enjoy was delivering in that challenging environment and the rewards that came with that, and from a motivational perspective as well, because you knew you was helping patients at the end of it, you was helping clinicians deliver better care, and you was playing a fundamental role in enabling them with technology that could further what they was doing with the patient. So there was a real sort of cause there that we liked, and it really sort of was motivating from a business perspective. So we just doubled down on it.
So let's take me on the journey, John. So you start up. Now, most people have an idea. They talk about idea, but they don't do anything. You then started doing something, and you started Block with Mark.
Yeah.
So take me on the journey, because there must have been some trepidation and some apprehension about doing it, because, like I said, you weren't a salesperson. You hadn't sold anything. You had a customer, but could you repeat that customer? Could you get another customer? Who knows? So what were the early years like in Block when you first started out, when you first had your first customer, and how you got your next ones?
I think they always say, don't they, the first 5 customers, it's so much more difficult than the next sort of 20. And I think that is definitely the case. And we had to work hard to identify new commercial opportunities. Like I say, I naturally fell into the commercial side of the business. Mark naturally fell into that sort of technical side of the business and carried on leading the sort of technical engagements. I separated out and started building, getting the office set up, getting all the finance, HR, sales built up. But fundamentally, I was on the phone trying to talk about the story of the other hospital and tell other hospitals why they needed to engage with us as 2 or 3, 4 people at the time, as a small team, and just keep the message going that we're different to the other providers. We care about what we're doing. We want to make sure that whatever you're investing in technology, you get the outcome that you're looking for. And I think that was one of the things that got us through a lot of doors, is that hopefully that came across in how I was talking to them and how Mark was as well. But it was that ethos of, we do care about the results that you get. We genuinely do care about it. And it's okay, we're a commercial entity, we want to make some money, but we do care about the result that you're going to get at the end of it. And I think that probably got us over the line in some situations that we might not have got if we hadn't shown that passion and desire, might not have otherwise.
Yeah, because there was a lot of, in those days as well, there was a lot of big companies, small companies having salespeople turn out fancy suits, bamboozling customers with technology. And let's be honest, John, couldn't really care about the outcomes or whatever. And, I'm a trusted advisor and all that sort of stuff. So do you think that was a key advantage? Because in some ways, not being in sales and being that technical and looking at outputs, that almost could play an advantage to you, because you weren't coming up in some fancy suit, giving in some slick sales pitch. It was like, actually, I'm actually interested in the outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't wearing bad suits, but absolutely not. And I think that we tried to make ourselves sort of straightforward in terms of how we talked, how we conducted ourselves. Like I say, we wanted that sort of passion to come across, that we really cared about the clients that was working with already, and we wanted to help the new clients. And I think that's that's something that sort of really sort of drove us from a values and a behavioural perspective. But there's, I suppose, lots of other different factors that influence that sort of journey along the way as well. And thinking back around, we needed referrals, so you've got to make sure that the CIO that you're working with is really bought into what we're doing. And so the way trusted advisor was absolutely bandied around a lot when we set up the company. But that was, if you look at the triangle and trusted advisor at the top, our aspiration was always to get to that trusted advisor spot. Never always managed it, and sometimes you'd just be a preferred supplier in a specific for a specific solution set. But there's always the aspiration is to try and be the trusted advisor to the CIO, the board, to help them deliver clinical transformation with technology. And that's still what Block does today. And I think that's sort of testament to what we set up, is that DNA does still persist through the businesses. It's all about digital transformation now, rather than and evolving that over time, but still being that trusted advisor to the client. And I think that's what stood me in good stead ever since we sort of started doing it. Really, we've enjoyed some amazing relationships with customers as a result.
Let's move on to leadership, John, because there's one thing being a manager at Colt, and then there's one thing being an owner and a potential leader of people when people start joining you. So how difficult was it for you to make the transition? Because I get that you could be a trusted advisor and you would do it, you could do the projects. When there's two or three of you, it's just getting your name out there and trying to convince people. But when you start scaling, you have to sort of move into a different role. So how did you find the transition between going from manager of people employed to startup to then actually, I'm the leader here, I am the CEO here? How did you find that transition? Because you must have had a few changes along the way there.
Well, you do, but when you're in sort of entrepreneurial sort of startup mode, you don't really think of yourself as a CEO, because you haven't really got a big enough business to call yourself a CEO. And effectively, you've self-appointed yourself anyway.
You've got the job, John. Who appointed you? Yeah, myself.
but you've got. I'd say what was easier running a business, and we talked about this at lunch. When you're of a certain size, I felt that the scale that we got from being 2 people to sort of 20, 25 people was we knew everybody, we knew all what the skill sets were, we knew the strengths, the weaknesses, and it's much easier running a business at that scale than it is running one when you start implementing a new management structure and then you start broadening your functions out and your capabilities. So I think that's sort of what sticks with me at the start, is make sure you recruit really good technical people that can really deliver well for the customer. That was the ethos, and that want to get involved in something unique, innovative, entrepreneurial, and that's how we motivated people to join us. The really good sort of technical people that might have gone to a bigger provider. That's how we motivated them to join Block and persuaded them to join Block, I suppose, in many ways. We're gonna be doing something different, and we're going to be fighting against the bigger players in the market, because we believe in what we're doing, and we're more innovative. We care more about what the customer outcomes are, and we want you to join us and help us deliver that. So that was a big part of the mentality. But obviously, when you start implementing new management structures as you scale, that's when it becomes harder, I'd say.
Did you then start feeling like like you said, a self-appointed CEO, but when you've got actually appointed a management structure, you've got managers working for you. Did you feel more like a CEO then? Was it thinking actually, we're scaling and we've got a proper business?
People have the respect for you as the leader, but I think a good trait to have as a leader anyway is to not think yourself as your job title, is just to try and help, support, nurture, coach all the people that are working for you, and help them set a good example for them to learn from. That's probably a good leadership advice for anybody, is don't think of your job title. Just think you're there to sort of enable people to do the best job for the customer or for whoever they're working for. I think that's a good mentality to have. But the biggest challenge, and I know you're probably going to ask me this next, is sort of around how you keep the culture. And we spoke a lot about this at lunch, didn't we? Around maintain your recruit against your values, the sort of core behaviours that you hold really dear to you in terms of how you built a business when you're 15, 20 people strong, and you can see it pervade across the entire organisation as a 20-man outfit. When that gets to 50, 60, 70, 80, and you've recruited quickly, it's a lot more challenging. And I think that's where your recruitment processes and how you recruit people is the number one challenge, but also the number one thing you should be focused on making sure you do right and correctly as well.